Happening right now, the historic arraignment of a former president as Donald Trump is inside the Manhattan District Courthouse right now where he faces those charges. We are just now learning that he has pleaded not guilty. We do know that he was not handcuffed as well. He was fingerprinted, no mugshot. Donald Trump faces about 34 felony charges. It all stems from this hush money payments to Stormy Daniels weeks before the 2016 presidential election. His team is accused of disguising that money as an ordinary legal expense. So we are now joined by Roy Herrera, a former federal prosecutor. There is so much to this. We just learned 34 felony charges. That's a lot. That seems like a lot.
It is a lot of charges. It seems like I'm just seeing coming through Twitter right now that there are some falsification of business records charges, which we expected related to the hush money payments made to Stormy Daniels. But there are also a number of conspiracy charges and counts in the indictment that I think is what makes this even more serious for the president and why we're getting to 34 counts.
So it is not necessarily the hush money payment itself to Stormy Daniels. It is what they did to disguise that. That is the sticking point. That's what's illegal about this.
That's exactly right. I mean, there's nothing illegal about hush money payments per se. The problem here, I think what the prosecutors are alleging here, is that Donald Trump falsified business records, related to the Trump organization and disguised those payments. And kind of related to that, in order to charge this as a felony in New York, you had to falsify business records in order to either commit or conceal another crime. In this case, the crime would be campaign finance violations, because those hush money payments should have been treated as a campaign contribution.
How solid does this case have to be? I mean, obviously, he's accusing the DA, Alvin Bragg, of being, politically motivated. I'd imagine that this has to be incredibly solid for them to even come forward with these kind of charges.
You would think so. I mean, obviously, because of all the attention.
Right.
I mean, we've known for years now that this particular activity that the former president undertook was under investigation, both from federal prosecutors and from state prosecutors. So you would think if the DA was going to take this position, that there'd be pretty strong evidence. That being said, we don't know what the evidence is. We know a number of people have testified to the grand jury, including Michael Cohen, who is the former president's former attorney. We don't know what the records are that are related to this. I mean, these are all things that are come out over the next few months.
How long is this going to take to get through the court system?
Well, some of it depends a little bit on the litigants. It depends on, the kind of motions that the defense is going to file, and I imagine they're going to file a lot. I mean, they're already talking about, filing motions to dismiss, filing motions to change the venue, for example. So some of it is going to depend on just the pace of the litigants. But then also, former President Trump has legal liability or potential exposure in other jurisdictions. So we might see him getting indicted in Georgia, might see him getting indicted federally. So what happens first is going to be a real question here.
I have heard no plea deal in this case. So where does is this going to be a jury trial? What is this?
This would be a jury trial. I think
And then how do you even get a jury that's not biased?
Well, so that's going to be an interesting question. That's probably going to be the basis of some sort of motion to change the venue, right? I mean, Donald Trump's going to argue through his lawyers that there's just no way for him to get a fair trial. Now, all that being said, the question is not really, when we sort of discuss whether he can get a fair trial tonight or not, it's not really whether the jurors have ever heard of him or this case. It's whether the jurors can, in an unbiased manner, apply the facts to the law, follow the judge's jury instructions, and give him his fair day in court. And we're going to see that, play out.
We know the district attorney is going to be having a press conference shortly after this hearing. Also, Donald Trump is going to be having a press conference, some sort of going to be addressing the country in Mar-a-Lago. You were saying that it's going to be interesting to watch what he says, because normally you don't want to talk.
That's exactly right. I mean, normally, now that I'm on the defense side of things, I would tell clients it's not in your interest to talk publicly about the case. Most of the time, it's not in your interest to talk on the stand about the case in your own defense. And that's usually because the kind of information you give out can be used against you, words can be used against you. So that would be in a normal situation. But obviously, the former president's taking a different tact here. He's going to have a nationwide address to talk about it. What will be interesting to see is, does he get into the specifics at all in a rebuttal related to the specific charges in the indictment?
Do you think his attorneys have advised him not to do that?
So he's gone through a number of attorneys. I think some of the attorneys are of lesser quality than others, so I'll be curious to see if anyone is giving him the actual sort of best advice. But even if they did, we know the personality of this former president. I'm not sure he would even listen. The
district attorney, Alvin Bragg, is going to be having that press conference like we mentioned. Is that to get ahead of the messaging? Is that to kind of direct that narrative?
I would think so. I mean, everything about this, as you said, is extraordinary. I mean, normally normal criminal defendant would go through this arraignment process in a matter of minutes, and then we would just sort of move on to the next defendant. Here, everything has been staged. It wouldn't, surprise me if the DA is doing this for the purpose of giving more information to the public, getting ahead of the story before former President Trump talks tonight. But I do think what we're going to hear in that press conference is a lot more specifics about all of the counts in the indictment.
It's going to be interesting to see. All right, Roy Herrera, former federal prosecutor, thank you so much for joining us and
Thank you.
your perspective.
Thank you.